I am a dude known as Mr. Beat. Over the years, I have encountered opinions online like this.
Talking about the wicked ones in the Jewish community that run America, run the government, run the world, own the banks, own the means of communication. They are my enemy.
Jews control the mass media in this country. They control the United States federal government, and they control the Federal Reserve Bank.
I'm here to spread ideas, talk, in the hopes that somebody more capable will come along and do that. Somebody like Donald Trump, who does not give his daughter to a Jew.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
Pretty disturbing, yes. And then I went to my colleagues and asked them this question. If there was just one group of people that has been kind of consistently persecuted throughout world history, what's the first group that comes to mind to you? I probably should tell you here that I did not tell them what to say beforehand. This was not scripted. In fact, they had no idea what this video was going to be about. They just were being nice and said, yeah, sure, I'll answer a couple questions on camera for you.
The Jewish population.
Jewish people.
The first group I probably think of with that would be the Jewish people.
Almost every single one of my colleagues said the same thing. They said the same group was the one that first came to mind when they thought about groups that were targeted throughout world history. And even though Jews make up less than 1/4% of the total world population, they do seem to come up a lot as a group that is consistently targeted, no matter where we're talking about, no matter what time period, including the present. What causes anti-Semitism?
Because for the most part they're ignorant of what it really stands for. We always have a habit when times get tough of blaming things that we don't know for the reason why things go wrong.
I would say in a lot of cases because they've been a minority group in an area that's been in a lot of, many of the places, made them an easy scapegoat for a lot of majority groups to persecute or to blame social ills on.
I think they've disseminated throughout many of the populations of the European countries and have always been a minority. They have been easy to be picked on and persecuted and scapegoated for many of the problems of countries as they've gone through economic turmoil and political turmoil.
And not to discount any of my colleagues' opinions, they were all great answers, but I did my own research on this, and here is why Jews are hated. But before I dive into it, I want to let you know that I am making this video alongside Grant Hurst, a fellow EduTuber who just released a video about the history of the Jewish people, so be sure to check that out after this one. Before we look at why people hate Jews, also known as anti-Semitism, we need to define Jew. A Jew is someone who identifies with the cultural community whose traditional religion is Judaism, who traces their ancestry to the ancient Hebrew people of Israel, all the way back to Abraham. Jewish people are considered an ethno-religious group, both an ethnic group and a religion. There are plenty who identify as Jews yet are not religious. Israel's Law of Return, which is the law that gives Jews the right to visit and be a citizen of Israel, says a Jew is someone with either a Jewish mother or who has converted to Judaism. Anyway, during the time of Jesus in ancient Israel, many were of course Jewish, including Jesus himself. After Jesus died, his followers started a new religion called Christianity. As Christianity spread, and as more and more Roman emperors converted to the religion, Jews became marginalized in society. Even though Jews worship the same God as Christians did, Roman rulers viewed the refusal of the Jewish community to accept Jesus as the Messiah as a threat. They straight up passed laws that discriminated against Jews. In the year 399, a law saying Jews couldn't marry Christians. In 439, a law saying Jews couldn't hold positions in government. In 531, a law saying they couldn't appear as witnesses against Christians in court. Rumors began to spread that Jews had horns and tails and that they killed Christian children and used their blood for rituals. In the Middle Ages, many societies forced Jews to live in segregated ghettos and wear special clothing. The Catholic Church did not allow Jews to own land, so Jews couldn't build up wealth through property. However, the church also didn't let Christians loan money for profit. Jews could, so they often turned to moneylending to build up wealth. Due to the fact that nearly every moneylender happened to be Jewish, this ended up creating a stereotype that Jews were greedy. I mean, people who loan money and charge interest throughout history have rarely been seen in a positive light, am I right? Christian rulers used Jewish money to build extravagant churches and build up armies. By the 11th century, Christianity dominated Europe, and the main minority religion was Judaism. Jews seemed to be the one group Christians could not convert, seen as outsiders. By this time, the Catholic Church was even teaching that Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus, and then the Black Death. During the 14th century, the bubonic plague spread quickly across Europe, killing around a third of its entire population. Since this was before science, people had no idea what was causing it. Due to superstition and fear, and without any evidence whatsoever, Christians blamed Jews for causing the plague, accusing them of poisoning wells to spread the disease. Probably one reason why Jews seemed to be a scapegoat was because they were not dying from the plague as much as Christians. We now know this was because Jews were generally isolated in ghettos away from Christians during this time, and because they were better about cleaning themselves and washing dead bodies before burial due to their religious customs. Still, tens of thousands of Jews were burned alive after being blamed for causing the plague. In 1543, Martin Luther, who gets credit for starting the Protestant Reformation, wrote a pamphlet called On the Jews and Their Lies. In it, he claimed Jews thirsted for Christian blood, and he actually encouraged the killing of Jews. Wow. Looking ahead at 1873, when the term anti-Semitism first appeared by a dude named Wilhelm Marr. Marr wrote that Jews were secretly trying to take over the government and that they shouldn't be citizens. In 1894, in what became known as the Dreyfus Affair, authorities accused a Jewish French army captain named Alfred Dreyfus of selling military secrets to the Germans. After evidence proved his innocence, anti-Semitic French authorities covered that up so he would be found guilty anyway. In 1903, the Russian secret police published some fake documents that were known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which described a conspiracy by rabbis to take over the world. The Russian secret police later murdered entire Jewish communities. After the communists took over in 1917, more than 500 Jewish communities in Ukraine were wiped out, and around 60,000 Jews were killed in what became known as pogroms. Today, the word pogrom means any organized massacre of a certain ethnic group. Then there is probably the most famous and horrifying genocide in world history, the Holocaust, during Adolf Hitler's reign of terror. He and his fellow Nazis blamed Jews for all of Germany's major economic and social problems after World War I. At the time in Germany, anti-Semitism seemed to be everywhere. The Nazis killed up to 6 million Jews during the Holocaust, most of them in extermination camps and concentration camps. The world was shocked to find out about the Holocaust, and fortunately, anti-Semitism declined after World War II. Based on all the attacks on Jews throughout history, for centuries, many Jews like Theodor Herzl argued that the only way to escape persecution, discrimination, and genocide was to create a Jewish state, specifically in Palestine, an area where historically Jews lived, and the location of ancient Israel. The movement to try to get Jews to return to Palestine to live and establish their own society was known as Zionism. Thanks to the efforts of people like Herzl, the Zionist movement grew, and Great Britain got on board. In 1917, in the Balfour Declaration, Great Britain announced it was establishing a, quote, national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, an area Britain now controlled after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in World War I. At the time, only about 4% of Palestine was Jewish. As more and more Jews moved to Palestine in the 1920s and 1930s, resentment grew among the local Arabs in Palestine, who grew to hate Zionism as a threat to their homeland. You could say Zionism entered the mainstream after people found out how the Nazis had treated the Jews before and during World War II. Many around the world embraced Zionism after the Holocaust, and Britain asked the newly formed United Nations to step in regarding what to do with Palestine. The UN proposed 2 states in Palestine, an Arab one and a Jewish one. At the time, Jews made up only a third of the population of Palestine and owned only 6% of the land. However, the UN's 2-state solution called for 55% of the land area for the Jewish state. On May 14, 1948, leaders announced the creation of the State of Israel, which immediately caused a war with neighboring Arab countries. Israel held back those Arab forces, but it ended up causing more than 700,000 Palestinian Arabs to flee their homeland. Why do I bring up modern Israel? Well, while much of the anti-Semitism that exists today has its roots in the Middle Ages, a lot of it boiled over with the creation of Israel.
You have as well a new form of anti-Semitism that is closely linked with anti-Zionism and hostility towards Israel. There is legitimate criticism of the policies of Israel, but there is a fine line that some people cross very easily between criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism.
In other words, some claim the creation of Israel and how the Israeli government has treated Palestinians and other Arabs ever since has also caused a new wave of anti-Semitism. Fortunately, today we don't see the systematic government-sponsored discrimination and genocide of Jews that we used to see prior to and during World War II. However, hop online and you will still see lots of hatred of Jews. There are lots of anti-Semitic groups that still exist around the world, and chances are you will see below this very video anti-Semitic comments. Go ahead and check it out, I'm sure they are there. Even if it's not straight up hatred, stereotypes persist about Jews. In 2009, an Anti-Defamation League poll found that 18% of respondents believe that, quote, Jews have too much power in the business world. And 13% of respondents said Jews, quote, are more likely than others to use shady practices to get what they want. Another poll given to citizens of Egypt, Lebanon, and Jordan found that more than 89% of respondents had a, quote, very unfavorable opinion of Jews. We know the history now, but why does anti-Semitism persist? Well, I think David Feldman, director of the Pears Institute for the Study of Anti-Semitism, puts it best, quote, people who dislike Jews rarely dislike only Jews, unquote. Jews often get lumped with other hated groups, all convenient scapegoats. When people today blame the Jews for the world's problems and say they secretly control everything, these are just old traditions passed down and taught to them. They are, frankly, unoriginal. So there's a lot of momentum that is hard to reverse. Jews have faced persecution, discrimination, and violence against them around the world for a couple thousand years after all. And while the bigger question is always, why do people hate others? It's important to also ask why specific groups are constantly targeted. Jews have constantly been one such group. As you watch this video right now, there are fathers somewhere in the world teaching their sons to hate Jews at this very moment. Anti-Semitism, unfortunately, persists. And it's up to us to make it a thing of the past. If you could just think of the first group that comes to mind as the most persecuted group in world history, what's the first group that just pops in your head?
Christians.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, this video is about anti-Semitism, so he just totally messed it up. Thank you to Mr. McClellan, Mr. Sandberg, Mr. Tieroff, and Mr. Frost for helping me make this video. And this was not an easy video to make. I spent a lot of time researching and writing the script, and this is not something I take lightly. So please let me know if you have anything to add to the video below. I know I was taking a bit of a risk making a video like this, so just try to be civil in the comment section. How should we solve the Arab-Israeli conflict? Let me know in the comments below. Also, a reminder to check out Grant Hurst's new video that he made that is also released today about the history of the Jewish people. I have linked it below. And finally, a shout out to my 2 newest Patreon supporters, Sergio and Pedro. Thank you so much. Next week, I return with a new episode for the Compared series.